fighting the desert, it's not just the enemy you got to worry about. The desert itself can kill you. And even in history, the 50,000 man Persian army was lost just to the desert. No enemy action was involved. You've got the heat alone is going to fatigue your soldiers and reduce their performance. So today we're going to start covering all of those Western Desert related type of rules. So let's head to the classroom and see just how we can incorporate these rules into our bolt action games. Hello, welcome to today's classroom. Today we're going to cover basically what's the climate, what is it like to fight in the desert. And in the Western Desert book, there's 2 pages really. We're going to cover weather effects in a completely separate video after this. So hopefully this will give you a nice quick intro to some of these rules. Now a lot of these rules existed in the Duel in the Sun, but they've actually, I'm not going to call it dropped the rules from Duel in the Sun, but they left some out in Western Desert. So today we're going to cover in both books and see, so we get all the rules. The next video we're going to go in and actually discuss combat in the desert and the things that will happen there. All right, so let's get started real quick. Ice Cold and Alexandria. The thing with, there's some climate effects. There's 2 climate effects that are in the Western Desert, and there are actually 4 climate effects or climate conditions in Duel in the Sun. So let's start with, actually only one of them I think is this, only one of them is the same. So there's actually 2 additional ones here. So very first one is ice cold, like I said, ice cold and Alex, and it states, infantry can quickly become dehydrated while fighting in the scorching temperatures of the desert. Here it's hot, damn hot, is the Duel in the Sun version of the same rule. Essentially, when an infantry unit is going to be given, and it's just infantry, is going to be given a run order, you'll need to roll a d6. And if the number is less than the current game turn number, then the unit is suffering from increased heat source fatigue and can only move 6 inches, but it still counts as running. So, turn 1, you're fine. You can't roll less than a 1. You get to run 12 inches. Turn 2, you have to roll a d6. If you roll a 1, you can only run 6 inches. Otherwise, you can run normally. Turn 3, on a roll of 1 or a 2, you can see how it progresses. So, the longer you're in the game, the more likely your run is going to be shorter. Now this is important in games where you're going to be trying to get off the opponent's table edge or trying to race to get to an objective. Because it doesn't matter how many times you run during the game. If it is turn 5 and you have to run to get to that objective, you're only running 6 inches on if you roll a 4 or less. So it's pretty likely you're not going very far. So you got to play in that with that in mind, okay? The second one is sand. Now, it's sand, sand in Duel in the Sun. It's essentially, sand getting in the vehicles and everything. All vehicles are treated as unreliable, which essentially means if the unit suffers 1 or more pin markers as a result of an enemy attack, it automatically takes 1 further pin marker. This is dangerous because think about an open-top vehicle getting pinned by multiple shooting attacks from different units, even small arms fire. Every time they take a pin, they're actually going to take 2 pins. So you can really force transport to get the heck out of town, right? So those are the biggest 2. Now in Duel of Sun they have 2 more. What they allow you to do, actually I think, they moved this rule from climate conditions to a different section in Western Desert, but it's the same thing. I'm going to cover it now because you've got these effects of being in the desert. You can ignore those by giving your fighters or soldiers. These are only the infantry. It is specifically infantry units. They're going to be given the Desert Fighters special rule. That's cost 2 points per soldier. And that's important because if you do that, so basically when you buy that, you don't have to worry about the issue for running. Now what's interesting is the way they've worded it. They say it ignores climate effects on page 158. There are 2 effects. But I asked for Warlord Games, and they confirmed that this Desert Fighters can only be given to the infantry units. It cannot be given to vehicles. So as a result, the only rule you get away from is this infantry avoiding this run effect, the dehydration effect. So 2 points per model. I don't know, maybe it's useful. It's up to you guys if you want to do it. The last one, this is only in the desert, Duel in the Sun. So they didn't, I'm not going to say they dropped it, they just don't have it in the Western Desert. This one's called And More Sand. Saying sand gets into the barrels and fire mechanisms of everything, basically. So all vehicles and artillery units fighting in the desert region suffer a -2 penalty when shooting at long range instead of the normal -1. That's a biggie. That's going to make it really hard to hit long range. So buyer beware if you want to use that. By all means do, but know that that's going to have a major impact on your shooting, because most of the time your artillery units are going to be engaging at long range. That's just, unless they get threatened by something closer, they're going to be hit by something from long range. All right, so now we got these things called environmental effects. And there are basically 4 of them in the current book. There are really 3 of them. Well, yeah, we'll call it 3. We'll call it 3 of them in the Duel in the Sun. There are a couple other rules here, but that we'll probably cover with the next section, next video. But we'll just go ahead and we'll do it with these 4. So blindside, dust clouds, dust trails, and deep blue sky. These are the 4 rules that are called environmental effects in Western Desert. The only ones that existed previously were blindside and dust trail. Okay, so let's go over those. And I'm assuming because this Western Desert is a more current book, it's going to supersede anything that might be different in the previous ones. So I'm not going to go over anything, any differences here. So blindside is this is part of scenarios. Okay, essentially, the idea here is you're going to want to attack your opponent when the sun's behind you. So let's use Monty and Rommel as an example. Okay, Rommel is going to want to, when you're looking at this, let's just say we've got, so Libya is over here, Egypt is over here, when you're looking at the map, right? So when Rommel wants to attack toward, then he's going to want to do it toward sunset when the sun's behind him. When Monty wants to attack, he's going to want to attack during dawn when the sun's behind him, because that will bring into effect these rules. Again, these would be scenario specific, so you'd have to agree with your opponent ahead of time, or even make this part of a campaign, right? All right, so the ideal time, like I said, to attack is when the opponent is going to look at the sun over your shoulder. So after the setup phase, so once you're all deployed, each player rolls a d6 and adds your officer morale modifier to it. So if you're a first lieutenant, you're going to add 2 to the die roll. Now, if you've already the officers bought desert fighting as an upgrade for 2 points per model, he can re-roll the result. But what you're trying to do is you're trying to roll your score to be twice that of the defender. So if the defender rolls a 4, you need to roll an 8 or better. So you need to have a first lieutenant and roll a 6. If you successfully do that, that means you've coordinated your attack such that the sun is over your shoulder and the opponent's going to be handicapped. Now, the player then chooses one table edge. It can be any table edge. And that represents the position of the sun during the battle. So any unit drawing a line of sight across the table, and if that line of sight continues and crosses that table edge, they're considered to be looking into the sun. and they get an additional -1 penalty to hit. Now the key here is you have to look at every model, and if any one of the models firing it at the enemy unit can draw its line of sight, and the closest line of sight, or the line of sight it's the best it can do, is it goes off the table edge, it counts. So if all but one of yours can draw a line of sight at an angle to push off the side of the table, for example, that means that one last guy can't do that. The whole unit is affected by this and is -1. Yeah. Okay. So now let's look at dust trails, because again, that one's also in the Duel in the Sun. Now, what you do here is essentially this is kind of fun. I don't know how easy it is going to be play. We're going to get to see that when we do a field exercise about this one. But dust trails is, it's a fact. You drive your vehicle through the desert, it's kicking up sand. And some of that sand and particulates are pretty fine and stay airborne for a while. So on a flat desert, those dust trails really are going to make it very easy for you to be seen. So you're going to use this basically if a scenario is being played that officially involves an attacker versus a defender. The defender can choose to return the first order die drawn in the game to the bag and draw it again. This represents the advantage the defender has from seeing the attacker's approach at a long distance. Note that if visibility is limited due to a haze, which is another environmental condition, weather effect that you can run into, we'll talk about it in the next video, or it's reduced for any other reason, for example, like night fighting, right? This dust trail rule is ignored. Okay, so that's the dust trail. And that's what was in the Duel in the Sun. Now we have dust clouds and deep blue sky. So dust clouds is not quite the same, but what it does is takes that dust trail and makes it a little bit more like smoke. So vehicles traversing the desert, I say kick up dust. Each time the vehicle executes a run move, only a run move, the owning player rolls a d6. On a 4 or better, a 4-inch diameter dust cloud is placed adjacent to the rear of the vehicle, so right behind it. Okay, that acts like a smoke marker, and you treat it like smoke for the rest of the game. So it can go away on a subsequent roll. It can also drift on a subsequent roll. Okay, that roll is at the end of each turn. Now, deep blue sky is something that's new in this particular book as well. Being that there's no cover, relatively speaking, in the desert when you're dealing with strafing an aircraft, anytime a scenario has a player rolling on the airstrike chart, they can roll a 2d6 and choose the highest score as the result. So this is going to help you avoid that rookie pilot. Now, of course, you roll double ones, you're in trouble. It'll also make it less likely you're going to have a delayed airstrike. That's what this does. Now, however, you do get to, if you have a desert fighter special rule, sorry, let me back this up. If you have an enemy forward air observer on the table as well that has the desert fighter special rule, you can only roll 1d6. So just because he has an observer doesn't mean it has to have an observer with desert fighters. That basically allows him to, I guess, let's see, the best way to put it, don't like the way they put this, but it essentially is saying that enemy air observers trained to also act as a spotter and warn other units of the approaching aircraft. I don't know, it's a little bit, but it's what it is. So it's very unlikely, though, your opponent's going to actually buy that upgrade. Could be, but maybe not. So in general, this is your chance. The deep blue sky, just being on the desert table, gives you this ability. You're able to potentially more accurately or more quickly call in that airstrike. There's one benefit additional to this. After the target have attacked the first target, it can immediately attack a second enemy unit within 6 inches. So this makes those airstrikes doubly potent. The thing here is it's only going to attack that one additional that unit. So you're not going to move your aircraft. So the aircraft, every unit within 6 inches of where the aircraft is takes D2 pins minus 1, or D3 pins minus 1, sorry. Every unit within 6 inches of the target unit takes that as well. Target unit gets attacked. Now, one of those other units that got pinned also gets attacked. So that's actually pretty good. Again, because you've got this wide open space, it's easy to see follow-on targets. So it makes the forward air observers a little more deadly. So those are the environmental effects from Western Desert. Now, I guess that deep blue sky was called something else. It was actually called 80 targets in Duel in the Sun. But now, I'm going to save for a later video the weather effects for something else, because right now this is a lot of information already. So let's end here, and in the next video we'll probably do a field exercise, and then we'll come back and we'll take a look at some of these special weather effects. Sorry, not weather effects, environmental and desert climate effects. And then we'll take a look at some more desert rules. Yes, there are more desert rules now. All right, catch you next video. Share, like, subscribe. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.